Good afternoon, my dear students. Welcome to the introduction to international trade policy. Globalization had contributed to the improvement of world trading system. Guidelines and standards were established to promote fair trading. Trade policy sought to loosen markets by promoting economic operation and growth. Specifically, trade policy aims to foster an open, non-discriminatory rules-based trading system and reduce barriers on foreign direct investment through negotiations and agreements. Sort of, every country implements a legislation or law that promotes competition and fair trading and, and as well as providing protection for consumers. Some regulations are intended to avoid exploitation, manipulation, or deception that will harshly affect the consumers. Today, we will understand the concept of trade policy, differentiate it with agreement, importance of training, and identify the implication of structure of world economy in trade policy. So if you're taking trade practice subject, the concept is the same, but for trade policy, the concentration is more on rules and regulations. The theory and economics describe that international trade is commonly beneficial overall, but possibly with an equal distribution of income and rigorous costs. To cope up with competition, countries develop different strategies to sustain economic growth by increasing production and exportation goods and services, which they have comparative advantage of skills and resources. Trade policy aims to promote efficient resource allocation, competition, economies of scale, jobs, and consumer choice, as well as lowering price. International economic and political situation contributes to the pattern of international trading system. History and past experience in international trading affects the decision making and articulating policy in global business. Post-World Wars influenced the mindsetting of every country on how they are going to deal with other countries, specifically Japan and Korea in 1910 treaty until 1945. So the effect is that now or even after 1965, South Korea refused to trade or open diplomatic relations with Japan. And I think uh, this is still the economic Cold War is ongoing based on the report cited online. With several initiatives represented by countries, leaders, and ambassadors, they cope up with clear regulations for international trading. It opened opportunities for other countries to participate in international trading. The events that took place for activating economic cooperation are number one, there's establishment of General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, known as GATT. Secondly, there are extending trading blocs. Third is the collapse of Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact. Fourth, economic reform in China. And fifth, development of fourth industrial revolution. So these events that happen in the world would really affect for the country to open their doors for economic growth, economic operation towards economic development. Having a good relationship with neighboring countries gives an indication that globalization affects economic growth. We can measure globalization through trade in goods and foreign direct investment, as well as restriction applying to the flows. The depth of global connectedness shows the magnitude of international flows of trade, investment, market, and profile comparative to the size of its domestic economy. Since 1980, there is a progressive upward trend in the index of globalization because it was assuming that countries are now opening doors to globalization for knowing the economic, social, political, and cultural impacts of it. The investment outlook for 2020, according to Morgan Stanley, he's an economist, believes that there's a simultaneous easing of trade tensions and monetary policy in global economy. But with the adverse effect of pandemic situation and COVID-19, China's factory output posed sharpest drop in 3 decades. U.S. share trading halted of market falls 9% last Monday, and UNCTAD warns of $1 trillion cost of world economy. It's really affecting the world economy. The implication is that the global trading system will really change severely. If we are going to take a look in 2019 global risks, and COVID-19 is not specified, although natural calamities in there, but specifically health issues was not at risk. The top five risks are weapons of mass destruction, climate change, data fraud, cyber attacks, water crisis, and etc. It means that world events could shape the pattern of international trading, and eventually rules and regulations will be liberalized to cope up with economic downturns. Take a look into the world's biggest economy for 2019 and 2020. USA remains the largest economy, but according to the reports online, CEO World.biz, it forecasted that in 2032, China is expected to take place. But as I had mentioned, with the effect of coronavirus, okay, the future is uncertain. But with the recent happening, of course, economy will slow down and possibly might have slight changes. The trade policy in this phenomenal situation will focuses mainly on protection among industries, employment, income distributions, government policy effectiveness, and discriminatory tariff administrations and arrangements. International trade is one of the most important drivers of economic growth. Exportation has a significant share of the goods and services in countries' gross domestic product, employment, and improved standard living within the economy. China had exported $2.4 billion worth of electrical machinery, computers, telecommunication equipment, apparel, furniture, and textile. It was in 2018, but in uh, Germany now is in the third rank. Okay. The USA on the second place, okay, for this time, exported 1.6 billion of organic chemicals, motor vehicle parts, computers, aircraft, automobile, medicine, and large amount of agricultural products. Okay, this data was taken from 2018. The World Trade Organization records and interprets economic activities all over the world. It reports the statistical indicators related to the world economic activity. So if you could see in this photo, the index of merchandise of different countries export categorized by destination and by product. The pie graph shows in 2017 that Europe is the largest export by destination, and take a look on the lower part, the yellow line. Okay. Manufacturing good is the highest export by product. So the implication of the graph is that this can be a guide for trader, okay, where they can position their products in terms of destination and affiliate products globally. Now, let us clearly understand what trading is and trade practice so as with trade policy. Trade is activity of buying and selling goods and services between countries. That's why it's called international trading. But if it's only local, you just call it trading. It is through exportation and importation of goods for manufacturing and selling it locally. For the trade practice, it is a method of competition and operating policy of business in line with the industry formally adopted. For trade policy, it refers to the rules and regulations that merchants or traders should follow in international business transaction. It includes standard rules, and regulations. Every country has a specific guidelines and rules to implement for the protection of traders and consumers. How about trade agreements or trade pacts? It is consisting of different regulations related to taxes, tariff, and investment. Treaties are agreed regulations and conditions by different countries that promotes economic prosperity and political harmonious relationship. With so much development in international trading, World Trade Fair Organization in Europe released a standards and guidelines of conducting trading. The global cooperation motivates every nation to participate in active world trading. With the help of different indexes of doing business, it attracts companies to take risk merging in global business. That is why traders are looking for other source of raw materials at low cost in other country, exploring new business opportunities, and take advantage of finding variety of quality resources. By this, traders are encouraged to specialize and produce goods and services with relative amount. It allows them to discover new markets across the boundaries of their country. Trading promotes innovation of new technology and improved labor productivity, less manual labor and more of robotic equipment or machines. Trading could also be an instrument of reducing barriers and somewhat an instrument for world peace. President Trump had signed a Trump peace plan, which aims to resolve Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. So this is to stop the war between the two and propose an economic resolution. But it is still under negotiation. But the point is, peace talks could open doors for economic development. South Korea had also taken an initiative to foster economic cooperation. From 30 to 100% tariffs of many agricultural goods and services, Korea is now in the process of implementing World Trade Organization zero to zero policy. Your country has an ongoing measure to participate global economic prosperity. When you buy mango in my country, per kilo it would cost only around uh $3 to $4. But that 1 kilo it includes like it has 4 pieces to 5 pieces of ripe mango. But here in Korea, due to tariff, okay, not just more than 100%, okay, you can buy one ripe mango for around $7. Okay, that's how tariff influence the pricing here for the imported goods. What are the elements of trade policy? These are the common aspects wherein policy focus with. Number one, you have there the tax. The tax for imported goods is, we call it tariff. Okay, and the trade barriers. Okay, so these are the restrictions to protect consumers and traders. But sometimes the tendency is limiting the free flow of trading. Country imposed embargoes, that is restriction to export product in a particular country wherein they are not going to allow one country to export the products to their country. high tariff subsidies, okay, government financial aid. Okay. There is a policy wherein government should not subsidize any export products. Okay. They're not allowed to give money to a company that is producing product for exportation, and that is against the law. Quotas, it means limits of imported goods. So you only put a certain number, okay, of product that can be imported. And lastly, we have the immigration restriction. Okay, remember what happened with the 911, and then a lot of terrorism attack in France. The United States of America had banned, I think, 7 Islamic country wherein they could not enter to America. So that could be one of the drawbacks, okay, of this trade barriers. For safety, okay, policy aims to ensure high quality of products and conform to the set safety and quality standards. There is one island in our country wherein we call it Guimaras in Iloilo. They are not they do not allow people to bring any fruits outside of Guimaras. Okay? It must be quarantined. It's only a small island, but Guimaras Island produces the sweetest mango in the Philippines. I think they are also exporting that mango in other parts of the country. Here in Korea and other countries also, they do not allow entrance of meat products due to the case of African swine flu. Now, in Italy, okay, they are locked down. In Wuhan, also here, for quite some time, Daegu was undergone lockdown so that people who are infected with virus could no longer infect other people here. There are 7 main instruments of trade policy. Government interfere in agricultural trade by means of this instrument of policy. The most common being raised is the tax revenue. Secondly is to reduce consumer costs. Government financial aid to support traders' income refers to subsidy, but for importation or exportation, it is not allowed. Maybe local companies they could provide some subsidies, but there are cases in the World Trade Organization wherein the Europe and America they have a complaint, they have a case wherein they are complaining about government subsidy. But according to WTO, US is subsidizing the labor, but still it is related with exportation. That's why Europe had complained about it. But it's still an ongoing case. The third one is the to attain self-sufficiency, government limits the importation and of goods through quotas. Okay. Fourth, we have to counter interventions of foreign investor. They monitor pricing of imported goods. It should not below the standard price in the local market. If in case that they're going to increase price that is against the law and they are practicing anti-dumping. They are dumping the price. Okay. And of course, there are some local regulations that helps the local trade industry. There are also different types of policy. Number one, we have the national trade policy, wherein it is the country, the Department of Trade and Industry who formulates the rules and regulation to safeguard the best interests of its trades and citizens. Second is the bilateral trade policy between two nations. That policy is applicable only for the two nations. Okay, it could also be the trade pact or agreement. Multilateral, more than two nations, okay, agreeing with the trade policy. And the last one is the international trade policy. These are the policy being uh, created by World Trade Organization, World Bank, International Mutual Fund, International Economic Organizations. They regulate that kind of policy. there are different classifications of trade pact. So we have the international law, and there is another national law, and we also have this what we call trade pacts or treaties. Okay, so it could be by number and the type of signatories, by level of integration if the policy is only intended for North America, or it is less intensive if it is only for European Union. It's kinda complex. If it is only for ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian uh, country or nation, okay, that is the rules and regulation is only applicable for that integration. Then we also have a special agreement. Normally, it happens when president of one country visit another country. They have uh, peace talk, they have economic discussion, and there is an output. And the output are related to this kind of agreement. Okay? When our President Duterte went to America, um, President Donald Trump had promised an economic aid to our country. And also in China, when our president went to China, China had promised and donated an amount for investment, and also in Japan. So that could be a part of special agreement. And the last one is there are some treaty initiated by the World Trade Organization. Why country wants trade policy? Why do we need rules? Don't you know that in Vietnam there is a Mekong River wherein the oldest trading, okay, barter trading in the world, okay, wherein the trader from Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, and other part of Asia. They went there and they're trading just in the river, and the policy, the rules and regulation is still old. The old system, okay, it's still existing. And why do they want policy? Why do they have to set rules? Of course, you cannot control some some company who would like to practice some unfair trading. So policy intends to promote trade fair. Here are the 10 principles of fair trade. We want to promote trade policy. We follow rules and regulation because we want to achieve this kind of principle. We want to promote poverty reduction by making producers economically independent, involve producers in important decision making, fair trading for social, economic, and environmental well-being of producers. We want right compensation, no child labor, no forced labor. We have to provide safety working environment because if there will be no rules for that, okay, company is just going to hire people without taking care of their condition. That's why we need policy. And on the top of that, okay, we want to develop skills for uh, producers, and lastly, to respect the environment. We want to implement trade fair in importation and exportation, um, custom administration, and other aspect of international business transaction. So you could see here specifically, okay, in every area, there is a particular rules and regulation. Rules in importation and exportation. Of course, custom administration. You have to secure a lot of documents. The shipping process, okay, the contracting, documentation, payments, authenticity of products, okay. So there are particular rules and regulation for that. What is unfair trading? If they violate the rules and regulation intentionally or intentionally, they are doing an unfair trade practice. Okay, so unfair trading is violating the set standards and methods of doing business. So these actions may limit free competition in the market. Here are the specific examples of unfair trade practices. They have the trade defamation, um, bad words, negative words, so like misleading advertisement, then trademark infringement, like stealing the other's name, stealing the other's design. Mostly that could be the case with between Samsung and Apple. And um, next is this deceptive conduct, imposition of unfair terms for acquiring goods and services, and more. And you could see there also the state aid subsidies, okay, that is unfair trading. Okay, and also some of the company they are trying to divert their money instead of paying taxes, they're going to divert and pay and use the money for some quote unquote corporate social responsibility. So there are a lot of cases with that, and they're being sued for tax evasion. And so what could be the effect of unfair trade practices? Of course, you could see that there will be lesser production, there will be high cost of raw materials, lesser income, and one country might impose trade barriers extensively and eventually trade war, like what President Donald Trump had done, okay, with his assumption of unfair trade of Mexico and China. He set high tariffs to China, and what China had also respond. China retaliate, okay, the same way. He heightened the immigration law against Mexico, limiting foreigners to enter the U.S. territory. So if you could see that there are other countries wherein they're not allowed to enter U.S. territory, especially what would happen with the 9/11, with the terrorism attack, and then a lot of terrorism attack in France. Okay, so in particular, seven Islamic country, the U.S. President do not allow them to come in their in the states. But by this, traders are encouraged to specialize products and services with relative amounts. Okay, so it allows them to discover new markets across boundaries of their country, and it also promotes innovation and technology and improve labor productivity. Okay, so there was a complaint raised by Austria that Amazon was abusing its dominant position to favor its own products against those of Austrian retailers selling on its market, and Austrian Federal Competition Authority received the complaint and investigated the alleged unfair trade practice. According to the complaint, Amazon terminated sellers' account abruptly for no apparent reason. Retailers accused Amazon for forcing them to disclose prices and added incorrect delivery details to the sellers. The case is still ongoing. Lastly, Nestle was found out by India authority indulged in profiteering of about 100 crore rupee. So it's approximately like 13 billion dollars. $13 billion. Okay? And by not passing on GST rate, cut benefits to consumers. Okay? Nestle reduced prices of certain products in proportion to the cut in goods and services. They allegedly avoid paying taxes, and some products have lead content. With this kind of unfair practices, international laws trade laws regulate to anticipate this kind of activities. So these international laws are policies agreed between countries, rules and regulations that companies should follow. What are the sources of trade laws? Number one, we have the International Court of Justice, or we call it the World Court. Okay? It is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations which settle dispute between states. The head office is in Netherlands. Secondly, we have International Chamber of Commerce. It represents the World Business Organization, championing the global economy as a force for economic growth. They create jobs and, of course, promote prosperity. Lastly, we have the United Nations World Trade Organization. Okay, it is an intergovernmental organization that is concerned with the regulations of international trade between nations. Okay, this is like the mother, okay, of all rules and regulations in international trade. Okay, these trade laws are grouped into two. Number one, we have the international conventions or regional initiatives. These are the agreements or treaties between countries or contract between countries, either bilateral. So bilateral means by two countries. Multilateral means more than two countries. Example, the treaty, if you're going to pass through the different oceans, you need to seek permit. Okay, so there is a ruling for that. A carrier of goods by sea, we have HAG rules. And for intellectual property, we have TRIPS and NAFTA, European Union, OECD. They also have a particular rules and regulations for trading. So those rules and regulations, we call it international conventions. They not all countries participated in this agreement. Okay? Only a few, maybe those who only have international transaction, who needs to pass through by air, by sea, by land, okay, or of course, and other aspect of trading. Secondly, we have the Lex Mercatoria. It refers to the law of the merchant. Okay? It is being used in Europe during medieval period. Okay, so the rules and regulations are being created by a group of merchants. The merchant itself, they come up with the rules and regulations. For international convention, the rules they are being created or agreed by countries' representative, president, prime minister, ambassador, senators, and etc. But for Lex Mercatoria, only the businessman, the corporation, the CEO, the representative of the company participate in the creating of the rules and regulation for the trading. Okay? So it consists of trade practices in merchant court along main roads. Okay, so it is a regulation set by the business firm like International Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so somehow government is being uh, discouraged to participate in this kind of regulate of this kind of making a rules and regulations. So it's kind of hands off day for these regulations. But of course, these rules and regulations are bound for the national rules and regulations of every country. And they believe that when government they do not interfere in the trade flourish, okay, and they give large amount of taxation to the state. And of course, as we said, that trade policy aims to protect the consumer and the producer. Okay, for the producer itself, there are several risks that they have to win over. Okay, so this risk, okay, will help traders to become brilliant and become experienced in dealing international business transaction. Some of the risks, especially when you'll be dealing with developing country, are high taxes, corruption, and some of red tape under the table. So those are some of the illegal activities. Okay? So if it is illegal, some of them might be asking for a donation or some bribe. Okay, that you may encounter. So that's why there is a policy. Okay, for intended for bribery, for under the table for red tape. Okay, and secondly, the problem with language and cultural risks. Okay, so if you're going to do training in other country, might be if the trader is not that good in speaking English, okay, they could hire a interpreter, but still speaking of your native tongue would be more convenient. And third is like risk of cultural differences. So you have to take note of that. Okay, normally the trade policy applicable for this are the local or the national rules and regulations. Okay, for China, the I only heard this to my Chinese student that you should not open when Chinese give you a gift, you should not open the gift in front of them. Okay, it's like unethical for them. And for Korea, I think number four, okay, typographical errors. Number four, okay, you don't normally have a fourth floor, okay, and also for Japan because I think it symbolizes death and bad luck. And for currency, there is like a conversion, repatriation, and fluctuation. Okay, I already mentioned about China. China is they set their currency in a very low rate to benefit their domestic company, and so that could threaten the international business transaction. We also have legal risk, okay? So interpretation and applications of the foreign law might be one of the risks if we're going to conduct business abroad. And lastly, the political risk, okay? New president, new policy, new officer, new policy here in Korea. I think from time to time, you keep on changing your policy from one policy to another. But I believe that the policy is intended for the phenomenal situation. That's why you do that. Okay? How are you going to cope up? Okay, policy is not that they're going to put you in the cage so that you're just going to move in one box. Though this is just only a protection, but how could you able to manage this kind of risk? Number one, of course, if you're going to do business abroad, you have to have an insurance, try to find a competent broker. You should try to learn how to transact business, like instead of paying currency, you could exchange with goods. That is counter trade. Goods to goods, services to services. And of course, you should develop an export plan. Remember, international trading is a very complex practice that needed a lot of considerations. You have to be very careful because your practices here in Korea might not be applicable with other country. Okay, you have to check the economic profile, the customary law, the risk, the barriers, and the appropriate strategic trading plan, okay, that you may use upon entering into one country. And this policy will protect the traders and the consumers, okay, from unfair trading. Okay, but if you have an intention to do fraud, definitely it this policy is gonna run after you. But initially, this trade policy aims to promote unity among countries and provide guidelines for every business transactions. Remember, trade policy are the rules and regulations intended to protect the merchants, to protect the consumer, fostering economic development. Thank you, and that's for today.